Nice to be with you. My name is Steve Goldsmith. I'm the moderator of these two distinguished gentlemen. Let me start, DJ, with a question to you. So let's make this session focus on how because these are journalists, we're some present government officials. Think about how to turn data and information into insight across various boundaries, right? Let's kind of focus on that. And you were chief scientist for President Obama. Let's do this in reverse order. So about a dozen years ago, I was deputy mayor of New York City. I tried to set up for Mayor Bloomberg the first data analytics center in the country. I now look back a dozen years and think of all the things I did wrong, right? It was a pretty substantial list. So take yourself out 3 years. You're one of the leading experts in AI in the country. What is the mayor doing wrong today that he should know about 3 years from now?
Yeah.
Probably a lot.
Well, so full disclosure, we went to rival high schools. So we can start there about went wrong. But no, in all seriousness, I think that one of the things that the way you framed it is a great one, which is what I encourage everyone to think about is, if you're 3 years from now and you look at the things where technology, what they can do, what do you wish you had started today? And there's a tremendous amount that I'm incredibly proud of what the mayor is doing for San Jose, because I still live next door, so that it directly impacts me. But like the things that I think about is, and this really gets to the mission statement of the U.S. Chief Data Scientist, which is to responsibly unleash the power of data to benefit all Americans. And the two parts of that statement that are incredibly carefully chosen is, how do we do it responsibly, and how do we benefit our entire population? And so when I think about that, I think about, well, how do we make sure we have the right people around the room, the table, to figure this out? Two, what are the data sets that we have access to? What are the data sets we need to go create so that we can actually have the benefits impact everyone together? And many of those data sets, they exist, but they're fragmented all over the place. We were commenting on, there's the amount that you could do on mental health issues, a lot of stuff that Vivek will talk about later, I'm sure, but also on issues around drug addiction, opioid use, other things. That data exists out there, but it's so fragmented across other places that we can't actually come to make good decisions together. Homelessness, all these other things as well.
So, Mayor, we're going to talk in the next half hour. We're going to take questions in about 30 minutes about various aspects of AI and generative AI. San Jose is, because of your tech background and because of San Jose, a leader. But let's turn your leadership around community engagement. You have a tech community engagement background. How are you using generative AI as a better communication tool? How you think about it in terms of providing context for your residents?
Yeah, it's a great question. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here with you all. I'll give a simple example. I think broadly, AI is enabling us to be more responsive, more efficient, more personalized, and we're looking across every city service area to think about how this emerging tool set can just help us better serve our residents in a way that's inclusive, protects their privacy, but just enhances and makes more productive government services. In terms of community engagement, very low-hanging but powerful fruit is around our public meetings. And just to give you one example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Wordly, which is one of multiple tools out there for real-time language translation. We have gone from a very expensive and cumbersome system of having people, human beings in our public meetings at great taxpayer expense, translating asynchronously people's comments to real-time language translation that allows anyone in dozens of languages in our incredibly diverse city. San Jose is nearly 1 million people, 40% foreign-born. Over 50% of our residents speak a language other than English at home. And people can now access any public meeting, pick the right channel for their language, and two-way communication with real-time translation that's incredibly accurate. And we found, so a couple of interesting insights. One, as we've implemented this over the last year, we've seen a 300% increase in participation from Spanish speakers in our city in our public meetings. So just removing barriers to participation can really broaden and make more representative the civic discourse, if you will. We've also seen that we have some value to add because we have the largest Vietnamese-speaking population in any one city outside of Vietnam. We've been able to use our own, I'd call it proprietary, although it's not quite the right word in the public sector, but our own data in language and added it to the language translation model and actually improved upon the base model. We're actually more accurate in the city of San Jose in our Vietnamese language translation than Google Translate because of our training set for our own use cases. So we actually have something to add to language translation for public sector use cases.
Just one more quick question on this, then maybe change the subject slightly. So one of the advantages, right, of generative AI is its ability to make sense out of unstructured data. So how are you using pictures of the curb or translating police officer video into insights? So how are you using these tools to gather information from places that were very difficult before?
Yeah, so I'll give two quick examples. It's funny you mentioned the translation of police videos. One of our big cost drivers is our public safety budget. Within that, it's overtime, where we're paying time and a half. And as we analyzed our overtime expenditures within our police department, a lot of that time and cost is being driven by writing reports manually. And so we're beginning, like other cities, to experiment with using the body cam footage that is essentially always on and recording to do transcription into police reports and at least give a first draft, which still needs to be reviewed by a human being and kind of edited and confirmed by a human being, but may in fact be more accurate and capture things that an officer may not actually remember. And so it has the potential, when paired with human analysis, to reduce bias, but also reduce overtime costs. The other interesting, you talked about things happening out on the streetscape. We have been experimenting in the last year or so with object detection pilots, where we put sensors on city vehicles. We have city-owned or contracted vehicles that cover every mile of every road in the city at least once a week when you think about the garbage and recycling service, but police vehicles, fire trucks, parking enforcement, and on and on. We are getting quite good at identifying potholes proactively, graffiti, a street light that may have gone out because there was light last week and there's no light in that same location this week, encampments and lived-in vehicles, which can allow us to, in a more automated way, proactively deploy a city service response to fill the pothole before it damages your vehicle, or deal with the graffiti before someone has to manually call 311 to report it. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to automate basic city services using these new sensors and the ability to analyze and make sense of that data.
Great.
Steve, would it be helpful maybe just to give a quick minute here on like where we think is the state of the art of this technology and what's useful?
I think I should say yes to that question.
I think you should. That was a leading question. It was a good prompt, as they say in this business. So maybe one way to think about this technology, because the things that Matt just laid out and some of the things that Steve have worked on, it's important to emphasize, like, where is the tech today? So language translation 4 years ago was pretty hard. Today, it's effectively solved. Is it really precise and accurate? Not yet. But when you start building these data sets, like the one of the Vietnamese population, as they're interacting with it, it gets really good fast. When you think about services, like I was very fortunate to be one of at the start of Crisis Text Line, which is the largest crisis intervention service, backbone of texting for 988, et cetera. Those systems where we use natural language processing to try to understand the nature of someone's crisis or what's going on and route them to the right human, that was hard a few years ago. A lot of that is very easy, cheap, it's very turnkey. The way I would think everyone should think about these things with the technology today is look for stupid, boring problems. If it's a stupid, boring problem that you don't want to do more than 3 times in a row, that's ready to go. Cut and pasting, those types of stuff. That's where you get the value. There's things where it's like with computer vision, those things, that stuff is coming. It's starting to get, it's like almost ready to go. In 6 months, 9 months, it'll be really ready to go. And then the way to think about this is that what is true, like none of us can actually predict where this technology is going to be in 2 years, but the arc that we're on of what can be solved with that is really opening, our eyes are getting open for the wide range of applications. For example, being able to take all the data feeds and just search through it and say, show me all potential car crashes, show me all near misses with a pedestrian. All of that technology within a year will be viable. It'll be within consumer grade technology within 2 years.
So I want to slightly change the subject, but since you said that, I'm a moderator, but I'm for.
But you're also, you're
I can't, inescapable interest in commenting. So this last point I think is really important, whether you're a journalist or a city employee, right? Which is, and we've been working with leading officials and mayors of the 30 largest cities on this very subject, which is, how do you think about outsourcing the commodity work to the bot in order that you free up time for current employees to apply their discretion to solve real problems? If the case would be true whether you're a journalist or a city employee, I think the point you made is really important. Let me shift, though, to a related subject, which is skills. So whether you're talking about city employees or your general regional economy, and Gigi, let me start with you. Go back to your LinkedIn days, and let's posit the following problem. We want to make sure we have an inclusive economy, not just a group of really smart, wealthy people at the top and everybody else at the bottom. How do you identify the skills necessary to create the ladder so folks have opportunities? Talk to us a little bit about the analytics you used at LinkedIn to identify folks who could have opportunities that may not realize it.
Sure. So at LinkedIn, our mission is to connect the world's professionals and help make them more successful and productive. And so from that, we realized like one of the best things that we could do was how do you help people get into the careers that are going to give them economic security and be well fulfilled in their life. And one of the things that I saw, particularly from my friends that were coming back after serving from Iraq and Afghanistan, is they take these jobs and I go, why are you taking that job? Your skills actually work just as well over here. And they just couldn't see it. And so we started on this endeavor. Could we start to characterize what are someone's skills? Could we actually create a network graph of all the skills, how they're related, and then use that to help provide people with what are the ways their skills might be able to translate to other areas, or what is the next set of skills they may want to go investigate with this idea of upskilling. And so we were able to use a lot of machine learning and data science technologies, a lot of which has now become pretty common, popular, to build out that whole thing. That's, for those that are interested to learn more about this, is what LinkedIn calls now the economic graph. And so we have a graph of all the skills in the world and what that looks like based on people's profiles. Most of it is skews much more white collar than blue collar just by the nature of the population that uses LinkedIn. But from that, one of the biggest challenges that we found is we could tell you with high predictability where next set of skills, the next job type that you're going to be in within 3 years. And it's really not good. You're going to be in the same job. It's like that's not interesting. And then we said, hey, did you know you could be in these kind of jobs? These are these are not reach jobs. These are like close at hand jobs. And people would not believe us. People would just say, no, that's not true. And so we realized what is needed is you actually, and this gets to a really important point about that you were raising about what is the role of the person and what is the role of the technology. The person is a coach. They are the mentor. They are the human touch. They are the person that uses that technology to help someone be able to dream. The technology just alone is information, but it isn't insight. And that delta is the part that the product doesn't have the ability to cover without somebody there.
I want to ask Matt how he's applied these concepts inside San Jose, but just, excuse me, ask him one more question, then I'll ignore him for a while. I'm interested in your universe of skill sets. So, because a lot of folks in the audience, they cover or they work or they fund their regional economies. At LinkedIn or otherwise, how do you create a taxonomy of skills so that a person who has this skill knows it's a building block for this job? How do you do that? How should we think about that?
Yeah, so the quick way we do it is we extract out like keywords or key things from a person's profile or other things that they looked at. This is like, I mean, for lack of a better term, this is ad targeting technology used for good. Like that's the way I would think about it. It's like we extract that, and then we sort of use a lot of training. We train the computer to look for these type things, and then we try to see where people have gone in their arc of careers and try to create a web of how these things are interconnected. And then we actually use a lot of humans to kind of say, hey, is this right or wrong? A lot of this technology is actually no different than what you think about how a large language model works today. What it does is it takes all the data, all this information that's out there, and then it tries to create a statistical mapping that says this word is, the next word is most likely. It's no different than that, but it's done with these terms that we're able to abstract from your profile.
So Mayor, no, I don't think anybody's done more of this inside the city workforce than you. How are you engaging community colleges and otherwise to upskill your workforce?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I think we're still in the very early stages of it when it comes to use of AI and machine learning. Inside the workforce, inside City Hall, we've developed two upskilling tracks. One is a data upskilling track that Knight Foundation, by the way, thank you for the funding. We've got an internal expert who is helping our teams across departments think more like a data scientist. Think about what data do we have access to, how do we improve the availability of that data, analyze it, derive insights from it, and make more data-driven decisions and create more of a feedback loop and a method of continuous learning as you would find in any tech startup, for example. And then we've partnered with our phenomenal public university, San Jose State University, which conveniently is in our downtown across the street from City Hall, on an AI upskilling track as well. And so we're still, that's still a newer curriculum, but essentially different learning modules to help city workers engage with these new tools and figure out how to apply them to their work. We're obviously, as a city government, also very interested in community and workforce development and thinking about how to ensure that our entire community can participate in these new industries and take advantage of them. And there's sort of a whole life cycle to that. So we're partnered with our tech museum, The Tech, which puts on a AI literacy program for K through 12 educators in our community. We have a workforce development program that we run not just for San Jose, but multiple cities in our county called Work to Future, where we have partnered with large employers like Applied Materials, Western Digital, to find folks who are interested in career pathways such as a semiconductor technician. So this is a sort of entry-level manufacturing job, but advanced manufacturing. These are high-paying, ultimately you're making $50, $60 an hour, but creating a entry-level, low-barrier apprenticeship program where you're paid $20 an hour for your first year to gain skills on the job. And I'll just end on this point. My read of, and DJ knows a lot more about this than I do, but my read of the history of workforce development programs in our country is that when government tries to go do it in a silo, it's not very effective. But when it's done through the context of an employer, so you take a company like AT&T, probably one of the most successful workforce upskilling initiatives in the last decade, where they took their existing workforce and said, we've got to upskill internally. We have to use new tools, learn new methods. And government can support that and facilitate it and connect the dots between, say, our community colleges and our employers. But I don't think it can be a standalone program where you just go show up to some workforce development center and learn some skills and then go figure out. I think we've got to create that connective tissue with actual jobs and employers.
Can I comment just on that? Because Matt's raising a really important point, that government, you're absolutely spot on, is that companies have been the ones that sort of implement this the most effectively because they have the most incentive to do so. Here's one of the things that I think is something that we should all be thinking about, is why is there the value of these AI companies so high? Why is so much money gone into them? It's because people see that the total addressable market is massive. Why is the total addressable market massive? It's not because they're selling software. It's because they believe, and the investors believe, that you can replace work. For the first time since the assembly line, all this, we are seeing the potential to massively replace work. And so this is going to make a really big conflict, in my perspective, of how companies think about upskilling, their incentive to upskill versus to say replace. And I don't know how we're gonna get through that very effectively.
I love this comment because it gives me an opportunity to reference a book I wrote. And if any one of you buys a copy, it will double my honorarium for today.
Now you have to say the book.
Yeah. Oh well, it seemed a little crass, but.
Well, no, I give you the
on,
prompt. Like we insist.
It's called Growing Fairly. But the point I want to make, and then I'm going to ask the mayor about it, is, AT&T and IBM and a couple of companies to the contrary. How many employers, though, still rely on 2 or 4 year degrees, which have their own discriminatory effect inside that, instead of doing the hard work of identifying the skills necessary and setting up this internal track to do it? I mean, if you were going to tell your employer, if you're going to make a message, construct a message to your employers about what they could do to lift more folks up into these jobs so that they won't be without the jobs, they'll be having the jobs, what would you tell them to do? What would you want them to do in your region?
Well, I think that's why I'm pointing to the apprenticeship model, because it really lowers barriers. We can go to large employers, and I think there's a lot of room to expand this, but say, where do you see the job growth? Where are you struggling to fill the roles that you need? And then we can incentivize, we can help create connections with the K through 12 system, with our community colleges, and help feed them a pipeline of young, energetic people who are hungry to learn, and basically create that talent pipeline for them. I think this broader question of how much will there be total displacement of jobs versus an evolution in the jobs we do, and an automation of lower level tasks, enabling people to engage in higher order thinking, I think is an open debate. I mean, I think our history has been that we have always created new needs, new wants, new jobs. It's messy. I think we have to have a strong social safety net, because there will be a lot of displacement, I believe. But ultimately, I do think we're going to continue to need human beings to do real work. It'll just be more enabled and more productive via technology.
So we have 4 questions. We have about 9 minutes, and our assignment was to save the future of cities in 30 minutes, so I have to move quickly here. Let's switch to city government, then I want to go back to civic engagement, then I want to talk at the end about bias, the risk of bias, ethics, security, and privacy. But Mayor, first to you and then to DJ. How will the use of generative AI make government and governance more effective? How will it allow you to more precisely identify and solve problems? How will it help you intervene to help people earlier before their problems become more acute? What suggestions do you have?
Well, I have the same question. I think it's something we need to try to figure out together, and I'm sure many folks in this room would be interested in collaborating on this. We have a lot of incoming data that we need to figure out how to better process and respond to. Our 311 service, which covers a whole range of free junk pickup, pothole reporting, graffiti. I mentioned some of these services earlier. Over 300,000 calls for service, over 1 million 911 calls, which we were talking earlier before the panel about how do you route that to the right place? Should it actually be a police officer responding or not? We're doing a lot of analysis of our 911 calls and figuring out how do we better route those to the right service response, which may not be an officer with a badge and a gun in some cases. My office, in the mayor's office, we get over 50,000 emails from constituents a year. I don't think we've solved this problem, but it's clear to me that emerging AI tools should allow us to better analyze patterns in that data, respond faster and in a more personalized way to what people are asking for, and just improve the efficiency. I think there's currently a lot of frustration with people looking for city services or complaining about the lack of a service, and the way that we're managing it is still very manual. It's still mostly a 311 call center or someone in my office responding to an email and kind of manually making connections. I think there's a lot of potential for agentic AI to ultimately be that thought partner, that co-pilot to help the resident get what they need from government without having to wait for someone in my office to open the email and think about how to respond. And so there's tremendous potential, but we're very much on the front end of that.
So GJ, build on that a little bit. You know, there are a lot of people hurting in cities, and there's never enough money to solve all those problems. So if the goal is to spend your dollars where they make the most difference, go back to your White House days, please, and use criminal justice or opioids or one of your earlier efforts to more precisely intervene and help us explain how we might do that in cities, please.
Yeah, so one that comes to mind, actually, Kelly Jen, who introduced us and is here at Knight Foundation, she really led this. And one of the things that we saw was, this was real on policing, is we got a whole bunch of the police chiefs, community activists, technologists, put them in a room, told them that they can't leave because Secret Service is outside, and just put some cupcakes in the room and said, come up with ideas. And one of the things that we learned in that process was if you really hear each other, you realize that nobody actually understands what the real situation is. And so people said, do you actually have this data? Most people said, we don't have this data. We don't know. Some people actually did have data. And so one of the ones that they showed was, wow, here's stop rates versus split by demographic, black versus white, look the same. Then you look at the search rates, and they're just unbelievably off. And then somebody says, wow, well, is that by specific region? Is it by one thing or another thing? And then suddenly everyone goes, oh, can't answer that. We haven't recorded the data the correct way. The way the police departments have implemented the technology doesn't give you that fidelity, so we can't actually answer those things. So we put a team of technologists embedded right next to the police department, earned their trust with the officers, a bunch of AI, early stage AI kind of engineers, and they started to look at the situation, and they did what's kind of this, say, what we call factor analysis. Sort of what are the key reasons why an officer might use force in a situation? And when they looked at that, what they found really was interesting is like there's some obvious things when an officer may be using force, and it's like they have a history of accidents, they have a lot of complaints. And then interestingly, in the middle there are two factors that really stand out. One is that they've responded in recent time to an incident where domestic violence has happened and children are present, or they've responded to a suicide. And what they did is because they were so embedded with the technologists were embedded with the people who were actually delivering the services, they realized the problem is dispatch. The dispatch system is not smart enough to be compassionate and realize that when someone goes from a high stress, emotionally charged event, and now they may not be the officer who has to write the report, but they are sent right back out on the street, and they have not been given time to decompress. So whose fault is that? Is that the technology's fault? Is that the implementation's fault? Is it our process's fault? It's all of them. And what we need here in building these systems out is collection of data, people with expertise on the technology, tightly bound with the people who are delivering the services, and a holistic goal of actual problem solving.
So I'm going to ask the mayor a question, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. And there are, it's hard to see actually, but there are mics out there. If you stand up and wave your hand, somebody will find you. So you can begin to stand up and wave now. Mayor, San Jose is the leader of hundreds of cities looking at the regulatory framework for AI. ethics, bias, privacy, security. Would you tell us a little bit about that effort?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to do my own shameless plug since you got yours for the book. I'm really proud of the work we're doing in the city, and Stephen Keynes is here with me. He's our Chief Innovation Officer in the city of San Jose. Something that Stephen and our IT team and others who are kind of technologists within City Hall have done over the last year is create this coalition we're calling the GovAI Coalition. And it started, as all great startups do, as just some very simple conversations amongst like-minded people who are interested in what the very questions we're asking today. What does AI mean for governance, for government, and delivery of public services? And so what started as a few individuals from a few public agencies meeting on Zoom informally once a month to just discuss these topics has turned into the largest consortium of public sector agencies working together to learn from each other in their deployment of these tools, of AI applications to different use cases. So the GovAI Coalition, you can find it online. There are a number of resources there. If you're from a public agency, you may already be engaged. Highly encourage you to take a look at it. The idea was to take what cities like San Jose have done. We're blessed to be the capital of Silicon Valley, to be a larger city with more staff capacity. Our metro area, which DJ's a part of, even though he's not a resident of San Jose, produces more patents per capita than any other metro in the country, more AI and machine learning patents in total than anywhere else by far. And so we've been thinking about this and applying these tools now for quite a while. We want to help other agencies and smaller municipalities leapfrog on our learnings, because unlike the private sector, we see nothing but upside in sharing learnings and learning from other people. So we're very open with everything we do. So we've created a bunch of templates with other agencies that anyone can use, a policy manual on what should your AI kind of governance look like as policymakers, bringing that to your elected body to review and adopt. AI fact sheet, so we have a standard set, think of it as your nutrition facts for AI vendors, where you have a structured set of questions about things like bias and where their data comes from and security questions, that once a vendor has filled out that fact sheet, they become part of an AI vendor registry that any of these public agencies have access to. Documented use cases. Bus route optimization is something we talked about. We have now, in San Jose, on the routes that we've tested, reduced the likelihood that a public bus hits a red light by over 50%. Well, that's now a documented use case where we talk about the tools we've used, how we did it, and any other public agency, any other city, county, transit agency in the country can go pick that up and then adapt it to their own use cases. And AI incident response, if you have bias or hallucinations, what do you do? How should a civic team think about responding to that? All of these templates, use cases, procurement guidance, governance guidance is now packaged up so that a smaller city that doesn't have the staff capacity that we have can take it off the shelf and adapt it to their own use cases and start literally 5 years ahead of where they would otherwise be. So that, again, is the GovAI Coalition, and something that we helped create and continue to convene.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? I can't really see. Are there any questions? I can keep asking the questions.
Hi, good morning.
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. So if you're with an organization of 50 or 50,000, how do you prepare your folks to embrace and adapt and take advantage of this technology? And if you're the unlucky person who's in charge of actually picking that technology, how do you determine, we're in the middle of an arms race. This thing is changing hourly. How do you pick something that won't be obsolete by the moment you sign the contract?
So we'll go to your question next. There's a question up here. DJ, Matt, and DJ, when you answer this question, it reminds me, why don't you distinguish between doing your AI inside your own proprietary cloud, where you have some safety about the data, and when you're doing it publicly and you don't? Maybe you could answer that when you answer the gentleman's question, too.
Sure. So the real quick version of this is, and I'm happy to talk about it afterwards also, is this is hard. So just writ large, we don't know, like, this is why the AI Gov coalitions and other efforts are so important, is if you're working on any of these problems in government, you should be absolutely finding ways to engage with your peers and trading notes. Like, if you don't think we're doing this in industry, like, this is what we do. We're like, hey, what did you pay? What, does that work? Is that what's happening? Like, the amount of testing, understanding, that's large. On the other portion of this, expect all of this technology to change massively. And so you want to be prepared in your procurement, knowing that you buy and sign procurement with the expectation that this is training wheels time, and that you're going to swap out all of this technology likely for something else. So what I would emphasize, and this is what we're sort of espousing, is extreme experimentation. You should be playing personally with this technology as much as you can. Be just playing with it, getting it. It's the same way like when we had mobile phones, like, or search. None of us we're search native or mobile phone native. You have to become at least AI fluent, testing these things, getting used for it. Your organization should be trying to say, how do we work as a team? I think the true procurement and real ideas around this will happen in the next year or so. We'll start to get there where we'll say, hey, this stuff is ready to go. But my best advice I can give you is focus on the application. Don't worry about broad platforms. Try to say, hey, I want to solve 311 calls. Great. Who's going to solve that for me, and how do you make that measurable?
The next question for Matt. Do you have a mic? I don't think you need one. You're waving your hand so much, I think we can hear you.
I think I have very good voice.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, hi. My name is Rosanna Drummond, and I'm the publisher for Alianza Metropolitan News. It's in San Jose area.
All right.
All right.
A plan.
My question
Who did you vote for? Who did you vote for mayor?
My question for you is...
It's all right. I won't take it personally.
You can re-elect him, though.
I know. The people like it a lot. My question for you, Mayor, is now the district attorney office, they say is increased 140% for the cases for the domestic violence in all the areas, I would say, Santa Clara. And then my question for you is, if the AI is used for monitor all these cases for domestic violence, and also San Jose, one of the most rich cities, we have many homeless, more than 6,000 homeless, and also many domestic violence cases, no results. And then, and also more increased right now for the situation, because it's a lot of afraid for the, especially for the Hispanic women, and they, especially the women, they don't have documents. And my question for you is you use all this technology also for knows about the domestic violence cases? San Jose will...
Let's let him answer that question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, no.
So excited.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's an important one. Interesting about data is when you see an increase, it's important to ask why. And is there a significant increase in domestic violence, or are we now better at identifying it? And there could be a bit of both, but I would say part of what I think we're seeing in San Jose with the recent increase in measured cases and complaints related to domestic violence is that what preceded that was a few years of us very intentionally increasing the conversation in San Jose about it being underreported and training our police officers to ask the right questions, to leave behind actual materials for people to maybe later when they decide to come forward know where to turn to and have confidence that they can report cases of domestic violence without, while knowing that their identity would be protected or that we'd be able to keep them safe. And so part of what I think you're seeing over the last few years is a very intentional push to better identify all of the existing cases of domestic violence in the community. And so while that increase that we see in the statistics is alarming, in many ways, I think the majority of it is that we are better grappling with the reality that was always there and that was being underreported. Now that leads to a new challenge, though, which I think you're pointing to, which is we have a huge backlog of untested rape kits, which is totally unacceptable. We've got to speed up now, and we've actually gone and secured grant funding to increase our capacity to deal with the fact that now that we are better identifying a crime and an experience that many more people in our community are having than was ever reported previously, the rest of the system downstream from that reporting needs to quickly catch up and be more efficient and effective at actually processing those cases and ensuring justice and supporting survivors. And there's a lot of downstream work that now needs to happen. And so there, in some ways, it's almost a sign of success that we're seeing that trend, and yet we have a lot more work to do to actually make sure that we do everything we can to support survivors.
Let's go to this question. DJ, let me just, 30 seconds, so just keep standing there. This question, though, and the answer raises a really important kind of, it might help focus the tension here. Go to your precision medical background. We can read all of the case notes, we can read all the medical files, we can read all the police dispatches, and much more easily predict the child abuser or domestic violence abuser, and much more likely invade their privacy. How do we figure that out?
Yeah, so first thing, bring the data together, but you got to bring it together with privacy preserving aspects, security, because these data sets, when they come together, we also have to be acknowledged that these data sets could be weaponized. And so there's a fundamental tension and challenge in there. Second thing that we alluded to is you have to have diverse teams looking on this. I know there's this whole debate, politicized about this. The teams that are working on this have to look like the team, the people that they're serving with this technology. You got to build it with the population. And third is you have to, with these things, is how do we actually start asking what we could do in the realm of possibility of dreaming? Like everything Matt talked about in this problem, these are horrible situations. What we can do with technology to support people who've been harmed and identify to make the job easier to actually get through these systems, criminal justice system, that is all possible. We just have to decide to commit, and we have to do it, and you have to bring a coalition together that wants to work on it.
Thanks. Yes, please.
Hi, Elham, and thanks so much for the conversation. I'm trying to connect the dots between, Mayor, what you were talking about, all the great work you're doing to support economic upskilling in your community and the economic graph that you described. Obviously, cities want to keep talented folks home. They want to create pathways for non-college bound students, create good jobs that keep families growing, and a lot of stability. Has there been work done to kind of apply that same thesis and data layer around skills for blue collar workers? You described that LinkedIn obviously skews white collar, but I can imagine that data being really powerful for a city that's looking to make kind of market scale change in their region. So I just love to hear, is that happening, or is it still very much a one-off thing because the data just doesn't exist yet, and that's something that really needs to be pursued?
So I'll just touch on it real quick on the LinkedIn and then hand it to the mayor since he's focused on this problem. So the reason LinkedIn can do it is because the volume of people, and it's just how the population skews. And I'm no longer at LinkedIn, so we weren't able to get the user base that really represents that blue collar. Yeah, and so we need for those repositories to show up and people to build that out in the right place. Is it possible to do? Absolutely. Is it possible to tee up? The reason we made all this stuff open and the economic graph open is that we wanted, at least back then, we want people to build on top of it so that you can give it to policymakers to help them make better decisions. And I sure hope that people would do more of that.
Hey, Matt, you can answer that, but I want to ask you, you get the last word. So
okay.
After you answer the question.
I'll be real quick.
No, after you answer the question, then I want you to tell the audience what's the most exciting thing that, since you're one of the country's leading mayors in this world, tell the audience what they should expect from their local officials about how they're going to change their services the most as a result of AI. So answer the question,
small question.
and then excite the crowd about the future.
Send us home.
Just briefly, and this is not an adequate answer to your question, but since I have 30 seconds, one is I think it's really interesting that the latest wave of innovation around large language models may mean that we disrupt white-collar work before blue-collar work. The lawyers and accountants may get disrupted before the electricians and carpenters. Not that we don't need productivity gains and new tools in all sectors, but I think that's that's something that's a little counterintuitive that we might not have guessed 10 years ago. I would also say, we were talking earlier about call response, and at the end of the day, no matter how good your tool is, you still need, say, the inpatient treatment bed. Similarly, no matter how good we are at identifying these skills and providing technology, we need our basic fundamentals of education to work. I've got school districts in the city, we have 19 of them, where literally only 30% of third graders are on grade level for reading. And so maybe technology is the answer there. I mean, I do think maybe agentic AI could help with more high dosage personalized tutoring, but at the end of the day, we've got to also just get fundamentals right in the world of atoms and not just rely on bits to sort of, or bytes to solve everything. On your question, Mayor, and by the way, once a mayor, always a mayor is what I'm told, so I'll keep calling you that.
Yeah. The farther I'm away from it, the more important the title is, yes.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm really interested in the object detection work we're doing, but I'll use a different example that we're gonna look into. Our permitting process, permitting and procurement are both areas of huge friction, huge cost and frustration for everyone. And just to take the permitting example, we have objective building standards. We have people who create structured data in the form of a building permit or entitlement application. You should be able to use technology to get people answers and issue permits in a matter of hours, days, weeks, not months and years. And I just think we should completely revolutionize the way that we handle land use entitlements and building permits. And I think this new class of technologies gives us the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Help me thank our two speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.